Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today, and not just into the magic of the Brothers Grimm. We're going into the surprisingly brutal and weirdly bureaucratic world that holds their whole collection together.
Yeah, we're definitely moving way beyond the sanitized Disney versions.
Oh, absolutely. We want to get into the raw, surprising material that, reveals these deep truths about survival and wit and consequence.
It's the perfect mission for a deep dive like this. Because the source material we use, this huge selection of Grimm's fairy tales, it reveals a system of rules.
Yeah.
And that system is as rigid and, frankly, as unforgiving as any modern legal code.
And you see that contradiction right away. You don't even have to get to the first story.
Not at all.
I mean, when you look at the foundation of the text we're using, which is a digital edition from Project Gutenberg, the first thing you hit is, well, it's jarring.
Mm-hmm.
The first few pages aren't about witches or talking animals. They're these really intense modern legal warnings. We're talking disclaimers of liability for damages, extensive rules about trademarks, warnings about copyright law.
It's a fascinating collision, isn't it? You have this timeless, magical, and often really brutal morality in the stories themselves.
Right.
And that's sitting right beside these meticulous, hyper-specific, modern bureaucratic rules. I mean, the text is worried about liability and trademark infringement.
While the stories are worried about kids being eaten by witches or tricked by dwarves.
Exactly. The contrast in the stakes is just, it's incredible. On one hand, you've got this detailed legal instruction that says, if you distribute this public domain text under the Project Gutenberg trademark and you profit from it,
Get this.
you owe a 20% net profit royalty, and it's payable to the Project Gutenberg Association, Carnegie Mellon University. That is a highly specific, modern contractual obligation.
And then you compare that to the stakes inside the actual tales.
Right.
If you misuse an enchanted object, or you fail to listen to a talking fox, or you just show a little bit too much pride, the penalty isn't a royalty payment.
Not even close. It's usually immediate death.
Yeah.
Or, being transformed into something, or losing everything you just gained.
So the very foundation of this deep dive, the raw text itself, it forces us to ask this central question. What are the mechanics of survival? It doesn't matter if you're navigating an enchanted forest full of, capricious helpers or a modern intellectual property minefield.
Both worlds operate on these incredibly strict, unforgiving rules. And as we move past all that boilerplate and get into the tales, we find that the Grimm's world isn't ruled by kind magic alone.
No.
It's ruled by a set of ethical and practical codes that have to be followed with this absolute disciplined obedience. Success is almost never an accident. It's earned by sticking to these often really non-obvious rules.
That sets us up perfectly to begin with the quest structure. So let's start with Chapter 1, The Golden Bird. This story is just a masterclass in why obedience to strange advice matters so much more than raw courage.
It really is the foundational quest narrative. It kicks off with a pretty simple motivation. A king's golden apples are being stolen by a bird of pure gold.
And the first heroes are the king's two elder sons, and their failure immediately defines the moral landscape of the entire story.
They fail internally. That's the key. The first son is set to watch, but then the text says about 12 o'clock he fell asleep.
And the second son does the exact same thing.
Yep. They don't fail because some monster attacked them. They fail because they couldn't handle the most basic job requirement. Just stay awake. It's a failure of focus, a failure of discipline.
And when the younger son finally sets out on the quest, his brothers are already deep in their own kind of failure. He finds them at two different inns where they, what does the text say? They succumb to the temptation of merrymaking.
Right. And they forgot the golden bird and his country in the same manner. Their focus just shifted entirely from their duty to immediate pleasure. The Grimms make it really clear that hedonism and a lack of focus are just as fatal as any dragon.
The younger son only succeeds at first because he listens to his non-human helper, the fox. He meets the fox, who's injured, and instead of killing it for its skin, which he could have done, the son spares its life, and the fox immediately rewards this kindness. He says, "Sit upon my tail, and you will travel faster." The whole transactional nature of this universe is instantaneous.
Yes, exactly. The son proved his moral fiber just by showing mercy, and now he gets rewarded with magical transportation and, maybe more importantly, knowledge.
Which brings us to the fascinating detail of the golden objects. The fox gives him two extremely specific pieces of advice about the golden bird.
He tells him, whatever you do, put the bird in the shabby wooden cage.
Right, not the shiny golden one that's sitting right there. And then later, when he's going for the golden horse, it's the same thing. Use the old leathern saddle, not the fancy golden one.
And the hero ignores both pieces of advice.
Mm.
It's driven entirely by vanity. He thinks it would be very droll, that's the word used, to bring this magnificent bird home in a shabby cage.
He prioritizes appearance, he prioritizes luxury over practicality and obedience, and the result is immediate. He's captured and he's sentenced to death.
This really brings up a central question, doesn't it? Why is the simple, the humble, the shabby container always the key to success in these early tales?
I think it's a foundational code that's designed to punish hubris. The physical beauty of the object, the golden cage, is a distraction. It's a trap.
So the true value lies in the bird itself, or the horse.
Exactly. And the attempt to combine that intrinsic value with this excessive, external, shiny ornamentation, that's just vanity. And it's seen as a betrayal of the quest's humble origins. The hero has to show that he values the goal, not the display.
He nearly dies, and he's only saved by promising to complete another impossible quest, getting the golden horse, and he immediately needs the fox again.
And the fox doesn't just help him, he scolds him, sternly. He says, "You see now what has happened on account of your not listening to my counsel? The consequences are totally predictable."
And then the cycle just repeats, even after the big caper is successful. The fox orchestrates this brilliant, simultaneous theft of the princess, the horse, and the bird. He gets all three objectives. But then he gives his most bizarre instruction.
Right. "Pray kill me and cut off my head and my feet."
This paradoxical request, and it's followed immediately by these final warnings. Beware of two things. Ransom no one from the gallows, and sit down by the side of no river.
And the hero refuses the killing request, so he saves the fox, but he immediately fails the easier warning. He sits down by the river and he's thinking, oh, it's quite a harmless place.
And that tiny lapse in obedience, just that moment of thinking he knows better, coupled with him falling asleep, that allows his two jealous, drunken brothers to find him.
They push him into the riverbed and they steal everything. All his hard-won treasures. Gone.
It's astonishing, really. The main character is almost killed not by the vanity that cost him the objects in the first place, but by failing to listen to this completely non-obvious piece of advice. There was no clear, magical reason behind it.
It's just a testament to the idea that success isn't a one-time thing. It's a continuous process of discipline.
It really emphasizes that even after you've achieved the magical prize, the real enemy is consistent human weakness. It's the inability to trust and just stick to the guidance you're given by those who have greater knowledge.
And he only gets his position back by eventually following the fox's directions to the letter, which just confirms that the fox's rules were the only real path to safety all along.
This reliance on non-human helpers, this whole network of favors, it's a massive trope. Which brings us to the white snake. That's chapter 36. Here, hero's power is totally accidental, but his response to that power is what defines everything.
Exactly. He's a servant. He secretly eats a piece of the king's white snake, and bam, he can suddenly understand animals. He didn't seek this power out, but once he has it, he immediately uses it ethically. And this creates that essential service and reward cycle.
He saves 3 different groups of animals, and we get the details. He hears fish that are trapped in the reeds, so he throws them back into the water.
Right. Then he saves a colony of ants by turning his horse away from their nest.
And then he feeds starving young ravens who are lamenting their hunger. Each act is small, but it's crucial to the recipients. And this investment pays off big time when he's faced with the cruel tests of the proud princess.
She demands these 2 truly impossible tasks. First, he has to pick up 10 sacks of millet seed that she's scattered all over the grass.
An utterly Herculean task for one person. It's based on sheer precision and just endless patience.
But the ants, remembering their debt, they arrive with thousands and thousands of ants, and they gather every single grain for him.
Then comes the second, even grander demand, getting the golden apple from the tree of life. You can't get more mythical than that. It's literally at the end of the world.
And yet the hero never even has to leave the kingdom.
Nope. The ravens, who have grown strong from the food he gave them, they fly over the scene to the end of the world and bring the apple back to him.
So success is achieved not through his own strength or speed or magical power. I mean, he can only hear animals, but entirely through the network he built through his prior kindness.
It just reinforces the idea that strategic reciprocity is a fundamental, almost like a banking principle of the fairy tale universe.
Yeah.
You invest these small acts of service, and they return massive interest when you're facing an existential threat.
It totally transforms the hero's journey. It goes from being a physical challenge to being a test of character and managerial skill. The protagonist succeeds because he built this large, loyal network of magical debt holders.
Precisely. His competence is his compassion, and that translates directly into actionable magical assistance.
Okay, so let's pivot a little from these high-stakes magical quests to a quest of pure, desperate, pragmatic survival. Let's talk about the traveling musicians, Chapter 4.
Oh, love this one.
The stakes are so much lower, just avoiding the butcher's knife, but the collaboration is just brilliant.
This is such an enduring tale because it really speaks to finding value when society declares you disposable.
Yeah.
We have a protagonist, that ass, a dog, a cat, and a cock. And they're all facing death because they're old, they're weak, and they're unwanted by their masters. Their shared ambition is simply to turn musician in the city of Bremen.
And they never actually get there, which is often the case in these stories. The success they find is incidental. They end up settling for secure, permanent lodging after they stumble upon a robber's house.
And the way they secure it is through collaborative, intentional terror.
It's amazing.
They use this frightening vertical stack formation.
Yeah.
The ass is on its hind legs, the dog is on the ass's back, the cat is on the dog's shoulders, and the cock is perched on the cat's head. And when they burst through the window and make this unified, terrifying racket, the robbers just flee instantly.
But the real genius of it is revealed later when the boldest robber decides to go back and investigate. He approaches in the dark, and he encounters the animals one by one, and he completely misinterprets every single sensory input.
Yeah, the robber reports back that he was attacked by a horrid witch.
Which was the cat's fiery, reflective eyes in the dark.
Then he says he was attacked by a man with a knife. That was the dog biting his leg. Then a black monster, the ass kicking him. And finally, the devil.
The devil being the cock crowing with all his might and, telling him to throw the rascal up there.
They successfully weaponize noise, darkness, and their own physical attributes. They transform themselves from this motley crew of unwanted domestic animals into a single, formidable, mythological monster in the mind of this criminal.
It's a perfect example of success that's achieved not by seeking magic, but through strategic appearance management and collaborative ingenuity. The robbers, totally convinced they were attacked by supernatural forces, they never come back. And the musicians take up permanent residence.
Their goal was minimal, but their execution was brilliant. Success through marketing, collective action, and just exploiting human fear.
Okay, so moving from that disciplined obedience and collaboration to sheer, unadulterated deception, let's explore the trickster figures, the ones who succeed entirely on wit, on confidence, and on monumental fabrication. We have to start with The Valiant Little Tailor, Chapter 18.
The tailor's whole rise is built on what is maybe the most famous accidental boast in all of folklore. 7 at 1 strick.
Referring only to flies he just swatted.
Right, but the crucial point is that he immediately leans into the ambiguity. He uses it as currency. He strategically embroiders this claim onto his girdle, and he lets his reputation travel ahead of him.
His entire career is just about maintaining this brand. He doesn't rely on brute strength at all. He relies on intellectual property. When he encounters the giants, he has to back up his boast with these fake demonstrations of strength.
And he's so clever about it. He carries a piece of cheese to prove he can squeeze water from a stone, and he carries a bird in his pocket to prove he can throw something sky high that won't come back down. Because, of course, the bird just flies away.
But when he actually engages the giants, he doesn't fight them. He instigates a lethal conflict between them.
It's a genius tactical move. He climbs a tree while 2 giants are sleeping below, and he drops stones on their chests.
They wake up and immediately accuse each other of hitting them.
Which leads to this massive fight where they tear up trees, and as the text says, they belabored each other so long that at last they both fell down dead on the ground at the same time.
And the tailor just jumps down, declares victory, and moves on. He never risks direct combat.
When the king tries to get rid of him with these impossible tasks, capturing a unicorn and a wild boar, the tailor continues to use misdirection and the environment itself.
For the unicorn, he waits for it to charge, then he just jumps behind a tree at the last second. The unicorn's horn gets stuck firmly in the trunk.
And for the wild boar, he lures it into a chapel, slams the door shut, and traps the raging beast inside. He's a master of situational awareness and strategic positioning.
But his final political maneuver is maybe his most impressive act of psychological warfare. The king, knowing the tailor is just a commoner, sends assassins to murder him while he sleeps.
But the tailor is only pretending to be asleep, and he cries out loud and clear, I smoked 7 at one blow. I killed 2 giants. I brought away 1 unicorn and caught a wild boar. And am I to fear those who are standing outside the room?
He uses his own fabricated legend to scare off trained assassins.
They flee, overcome by a great dread, completely convinced that the man who slew 7 at a stroke would surely kill them all. His brand was stronger than the king's army.
And he secures his position. He remains king. It's a story where confidence and skillful deception just completely replace noble birth and physical prowess.
Now, if the valiant tailor is cunning, then the little peasant, that's chapter 28, is pure, escalating, murderous malice. And it's rewarded entirely with wealth. This is one of the darkest trickster tales because the deception starts so small and it ends with a village-wide catastrophe.
The peasant is like the cynical flip side of the tailor. He begins with a simple bit of luck. He sells his dead cow's skin for 300 tailors after finding out he can get a better price in town.
And that success just fuels his confidence and his escalating need to deceive everyone around him.
He moves so quickly to the soothsayer trick.
Yeah.
He hides a raven wrapped in a skin, claims it's a prophet, and manages to eavesdrop on a conversation at the miller's house. The miller and the parson are having this illicit feast.
Right, so he uses this inside knowledge to make the raven prophesy what the hidden dishes are. Roast meat, cakes, salad, wine.
The parson is then totally convinced he's a prophet when the peasant reveals the devil in the closet, which is just the parson himself who was hiding. So the peasant gains this massive reputation and gets rich.
But his true wicked nature emerges right after that. He turns this initial success into a collective disaster for his neighbors. He convinces all the envious villagers to kill their own cows and sell the skins, promising them each 300 tailors.
Which instantly destroys their livelihood. Their entire wealth is gone. The villagers, understandably furious and now totally ruined, they sentence him to death by being rolled into the water in a barrel.
And this is the moment where the story confirms that the peasant is just an agent of total chaos.
And yet, he pulls off the final lethal bait and switch. He sees an ambitious shepherd nearby who wants to become mayor, and the peasant starts crying and screaming, "No, I will not do it. If the whole world insists on it, I will not do it."
He convinces the shepherd that the reason the village is trying to put him in the barrel is to force him to become mayor, and he's just protesting out of some kind of false modesty.
The shepherd, desperate for power, trades places with him instantly. The village, believing they've finally killed the peasant, rolls the barrel into the water.
Then the peasant emerges later, driving a massive flock of sheep. He claims he sank to the bottom, pushed out the bottom of the barrel, and found these pretty meadows on which a number of lambs were feeding. He says the river bottom is full of livestock.
And the final, shocking conclusion is that the entire furious, greedy village, including the mayor, they all plunge into the river, chasing after the reflected clouds they see in the water, which they think are sheep.
And the peasant becomes rich as the sole heir to the entire drowned village's assets.
Wait, so there is absolutely no consequence. He's rewarded with the entire village's wealth for being a mass murderer. What does that even say about the societal foundation of these tales?
I think it suggests that superior deception, even when it's lethal, is the highest form of competence. The little peasant is the ultimate cynical realist. In a world without reliable institutional justice, superior wit and malice guarantee success. He wasn't punished by external forces because he only exploited the internal flaws, the greed, and the envy of his victims.
Wow. It makes the failures of the merely foolish look almost sweet by comparison. We definitely need a palate cleanser of some harmless, accidental incompetence, like in Clever Elsie and Frederick and Catherine.
These domestic disaster stories are a necessary bridge. They contrast that successful lethal malice with just utterly failing folly. Elsie's whole marriage is decided by her so-called clever foresight. She sees a pickaxe hanging in the cellar and immediately starts weeping.
Weeping about the death of her future hypothetical child who will be killed by it while drawing beer.
Right. And the whole family joins in this lamentation over a non-existent child, which leads her future husband Hans to declare, "More understanding than that is not needed for my household. As you are such a clever Elsie, I will have you."
The bar for cleverness is set extraordinarily low.
And post-marriage, her cleverness vanishes completely. She's sent to cut corn, but she decides to eat her broth and sleep first. Then she's found tangled in a fowler's net.
And she has an existential crisis because of the jingling bells on the net. She runs away asking everyone if she is still herself. Her folly is harmless, but it's absolute.
And Catherine is the patron saint of zero accountability. Her story is just a litany of household failures, The dog steals the steak. She leaves the tap on the ale barrel running.
She uses a sack of fine meal to dry up the spilled ale. She even greases the trees with butter, thinking it'll make them more fruitful.
And her constant defense to her husband Frederick is always, "Wait, Frederick, I did not know I was doing wrong. You should have told me before."
These tales really function to show that utter well-intentioned incompetence is rare, but it's often tolerated. It's not like the calculated greed that we see punished elsewhere. Her folly is a domestic disaster. The little peasants was societal destruction.
And only one of them is rewarded.
So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, it seems like in the Grimm's universe, you can be utterly stupid and survive, like Elsie and Catherine.
Or you could be brilliantly evil and prosper, like the little peasant.
But you cannot be ambitiously good and break the rules, like the hero from The Golden Bird.
That's a perfect summary.
All right, let's talk about the stories that truly define the unsanitized Grimms. The ones famous for these unflinching portrayals of violence, family betrayal, and immediate graphic justice. We have to start with Chapter 40, The Juniper Tree.
This tale is arguably the most psychologically disturbing in the whole collection. It deals explicitly with cannibalism and infanticide within the immediate family. The boy is born as white as snow and as red as blood just before his mother dies, and she requests to be buried under the juniper tree.
The wicked stepmother immediately sees the boy as an obstacle to her own daughter, Marlene. And the moment of the murder is just chillingly swift. She kills him with a heavy chest lid, and then she manipulates Marlene into believing she was responsible,
Creating this false shared guilt to bind her daughter to secrecy.
But the truly shocking detail, the one that sticks with you long after you read it, is the meal. The stepmother cuts up the boy, she boils him with spices, and she serves him to the unsuspecting father as black soup.
And the father finds it delicious.
The image of the father unknowingly consuming his own son and actually enjoying the taste, it makes him an unwitting participant in this horrific crime. It forces you, the audience, to confront this idea of profound, hidden violation.
And justice manifests through the spirit, which is very common when institutional justice is impossible. The boy's spirit transforms into a beautiful bird, and it sings the full, graphic account of the murder in the meal. He flies to different family members, offering gifts in exchange for his song: a gold chain for the father, red shoes for Marlene.
The song is basically a courtroom testimony. It details every step of the crime, naming the roles. My mother killed her little son, my father grieved when I was gone, my sister loved me best of all. It's the public disclosure of a private horror.
And justice is delivered not by the father or by the law, but by the bird itself. He flies home and drops a millstone, which he got from the mill, on the stepmother's head, crushing her instantly. The millstone, this common tool of domestic industry, becomes the instrument of proportional violence.
And then the boy reappears and the family is reunited, purged of the source of evil. The violence is immediate, spiritually mediated, and final. We see the same high stakes, though driven by a different motivation, in Hansel and Gretel.
Right. Here, the initial crime, the attempted abandonment of the children, is driven by necessity. The source states clearly they faced great dearth or famine. The father is reluctant. He only consents after being scolded and reproached by his wife.
Which distinguishes it from the pure malice of the stepmother in the juniper tree.
Absolutely. The failure of the path markers is critical to the children's eventual peril. The pebbles work the first time. They allow them to get back home. But the breadcrumbs fail because the birds eat them. It shows how even the benevolent parts of the natural world can sometimes conspire against your survival.
And this inability to leave a trace leads them straight to the witch's house. The witch uses calculated deceit. She fattens Hansel up in a little stable. But Hansel, demonstrating quick, practical wit, tricks the old woman who has dim eyes.
He sticks out a little bone instead of his finger.
And this buys them 4 weeks of critical time.
And the ultimate act of deliverance, the one that ensures their physical survival, it falls entirely to Gretel. The witch commands Gretel to creep into the oven to test the heat. It's a clear death trap.
Gretel recognizes the plot, and she asks the witch to demonstrate how to get in, claiming she doesn't understand.
And the source is absolutely unequivocal about what happens next. Gretel shoves the witch into the oven, shuts the iron door, fastens the bolt, and the godless witch was miserably burnt to death.
It's a moment of profound female agency and decisiveness. It requires physical strength and incredible psychological composure. Gretel is the one who secures their release, not Hansel, who was just delaying his fate.
It's a recurring theme, isn't it? The ingenuity of the seemingly weaker party provides the final legal solution and removes the threat permanently.
Now, let's look at a short, sharp lesson in trust failure that offers zero redemption. Cat and mouse in partnership.
Oh, this is a devastatingly cynical story. It's perfect for illustrating the harsh pragmatism of the Grimm's world. The cat, feigning great love and friendship, convinces the mouse to pool their resources, a pot of fat stored safely in a church for the winter.
The cat then repeatedly betrays that trust. He uses the pretense of being a godmother to an imaginary cousin as an excuse to sneak off and eat the fat.
And he uses these trips to create this ironic, dark joke he's playing on the mouse. He names the progressively consumed stages of the fat, top off, then half done.
And when winter arrives and the mouse finally realizes the pot is empty, she whispers the last name the cat told her, all gone.
And that fatal whispered phrase, the realization of total betrayal, is her last word.
Scarcely had she spoken it before the cat springs on her and swallows her down, confirming that the cat wasn't just eating their shared resource, he was using the mouse for emotional satisfaction before eating her for dinner.
And the story ends with one of the harshest summaries in the entire collection. Verily, that is the way of the world. No magic, no quest, just cold, hard, rational betrayal for personal gain.
A truly profound lesson in skepticism over sentimentality. Let's shift focus a bit. We see how hubris is universally punished in the Grimm's universe, but usually only when that hubris challenges the fundamental natural order. This is perfectly encapsulated in Chapter 10, The Fisherman and His Wife.
This tale is a pure moral arc. It demonstrates the immediate progressive consequences of insatiable desire. Ilsebil, the wife, she continuously pressures her husband to ask the magical flounder for increasingly elevated statuses.
Starting as a fisherman's wife, rising to queen, then emperor, and finally pope.
What I find so striking is how the external environment, the world around them, mirrors her internal moral decay. Each request is marked by a meteorological shift. The sea, which started out clear, quickly turns dark gray color, then quite black, and began to roar.
The sea acts as a moral barometer. It signifies the anger and disruption caused by her increasingly ambitious and inherently unnatural demands on the established order.
The progression of her requests is exponential, but the final demand crosses a cosmic boundary.
Right, she attempts to usurp cosmological power. She realizes that the sun rises without her permission, and so she demands to be lord of the sun and moon. The fisherman is horrified. He falls out of bed at the sheer impossibility of it.
And this demand is the uncrossable line. Human ambition can be tolerated up to monarchical power, but attempting to control universal divine or cosmic forces, the tides, the sun, the moon, that results in immediate total revocation of all privilege. The fish simply replies, "Go home to your pigsty again."
It does raise that important question you mentioned earlier, though. Is this story truly about greed, or is it about punishing the female voice seeking power? The husband is just compliant, but Ilsebil is the active agent of ambition. Doesn't that put all the blame squarely on the woman's desire for agency?
It absolutely reflects the patriarchal structures of the time. The narrative punishes ambition that seeks to overturn the natural, established hierarchy. And in the context of this tale, that ambition is channeled entirely through Ilsebil's voice, which is amplified through the passive male intermediary, the fisherman.
So the tale implies that women who push beyond the domestic sphere into the political or cosmic realm are inherently chaotic forces.
Exactly. Forces that must be violently reduced to their lowest possible status.
A powerful lesson about the dangers of seeking too much agency. Speaking of revocation based on pride, Rumpelstiltskin is another excellent example of power being tied to a secret identity.
The setup, again, is driven by the king's avarice and the miller's silly, boastful lie that his daughter can spin straw into gold. The miller's daughter is then forced into these 3 deals with the dwarf.
Escalating from trinkets, a necklace, a ring to the most valuable commodity of all, her firstborn child. The king's greed is what forces her into this terrible promise.
The dwarf performs the impossible magic, but his fatal flaw is just pure ego. He needs to gloat about his secret identity. He's singing his own name aloud in the woods because he's so confident that no one will ever discover it.
And when the queen finally guesses his name, the consequence is explosive and entirely self-inflicted. The source vividly describes it. He destroys himself in a fit of uncontrollable rage.
He stamps his right foot so deep into the floor that he has to hold on with both hands to pull it out, only to disappear completely.
So the magic is internal, powerful, mysterious, but the mechanism of its failure is purely emotional. It's pride and rage. His physical self-destruction is fueled by the trauma of being known.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition. Complex magic undone by the simplest of human flaws. His identity was the key to his power, and once that key was turned against him, he literally imploded.
Now, contrasting that carefully calculated magical system with the success of pure accidental chaos, we have to turn to Dr. Know-all.
This is one of my favorite trickster tales, because Crab, the poor peasant, is inspired to become a doctor purely out of envy for a doctor's lavish dinner. His training is a complete joke. He buys an ABC book with a cock on the front, sells his oxen for nice clothes, and paints a sign that says, "I am Dr. Know-all."
He's the definition of fake it till you make it.
His entire success hinges on a series of hilarious misinterpretations during a theft investigation. A rich lord brings him in to find stolen money. As the servants bring in the dishes, Crab nudges his wife, Greet, and says, "Greet, that was the first," just commenting on the first dish of the meal.
But the first servant, who is, in fact, the first thief, is terrified. He's convinced the doctor knows everything, and the exact same scenario repeats with the second and third servants. The servants' own fear and their confirmation bias are the true engines of the doctor's success.
And the climax of accidental genius comes when the Lord asks him to guess the covered dish, which happens to be Crab's. Crab, having no idea, cries out in self-pity, thinking of his own situation. "Ah, poor Crab," referring to himself.
Yeah, and the Lord takes this as confirmation of his ultimate genius.
This leads the four terrified servants to confess to Crab outside, and they pay him a massive sum to keep silent. Crab accepts the money, becomes renowned, and never actually reveals who stole the money. He profited handsomely from both the criminals and the victim by never displaying any actual knowledge.
It's the ultimate victory for confidence over competence, reinforced by the anxiety and guilt of the criminals involved. Dr. Know-all succeeds not because he understands the world, but because the guilty believe he does.
Okay, so we've covered quests, cunning, consequences. Let's maybe run through a few fascinating techniques and story mechanisms that really define the unique mechanical structure of the Grimm's world. We can start with Sweetheart Roland. It uses transformation as not just an escape route, but as an offensive strategy.
This is a highly mechanical escape story. The girl uses 3 drops of blood on the ground to answer the witch's calls, which gives her and Roland time to escape.
And the moment the witch gets close, they implement these rapid defensive transformations.
First, she turns Roland into a lake and herself into a duck. This foils the witch, who tries to lure the duck away with breadcrumbs, but it fails.
The second transformation is far more dangerous. They turn into a briar rose and a fiddler, that's Roland. The witch knows exactly who the flower is and she tries to pluck it, but the fiddler starts playing a magical dance.
And the dance is lethal. The fiddler forces the witch to dance uncontrollably in the thorny hedge until she bleeds to death. Transformation isn't just concealment here, it's a magical weapon that makes the landscape itself complicit in the execution of the villain.
The physical violence here is so interesting because it's mediated through the magic of melody. The witch is forced to execute herself via the natural sharpness of the hedge, driven by Roland's magical music. It's a very specific, satisfying form of poetic justice.
Next, we have what might be the most persistent and successful vengeance plot in the Grimms, demonstrating systemic revenge: the dog and the sparrow.
This story provides a grim model of unrelenting systemic revenge, where the Avenger uses strategy to force the villain into a series of catastrophic, self-destructive actions. A cruel carter drives his cart over the sparrow's friend, a sleeping dog, crushing him to death.
And simply because the sparrow told him to stop.
The sparrow immediately vows vengeance, warning him, "This deed of thine shall cost thee all thou art worth." And the vibrio delivers, systematically destroying his livelihood in 4 distinct steps.
First, he pecks the bungs out of 2 wine casks, spilling all the wine. The carter loses his trade goods.
Then the sparrow methodically kills all 3 of his horses. He perches on their heads, pecking them until the furious carter, aiming a hatchet at the sparrow, kills his own animals instead.
He forces the carter to destroy his own means of transportation and livelihood. The sparrow then follows the carter home and organizes thousands of birds to descend on his farm and eat all his stored corn.
And finally, the carter is so enraged that when he finally catches the sparrow, he tells his wife to kill it while he holds it in his hand. She misses, hits the carter's head, and he falls down dead.
The sparrow's prophecy, "Thy cruelty shall cost thee thy life yet," is fulfilled entirely by the carter's own rage and his wife's inaccuracy. It's a masterclass in driving a foe towards self-immolation.
The sparrow never had to physically fight. It merely orchestrated the environment and the emotions of the carter until he was ruined and then destroyed by his own family. It perfectly illustrates that concept of decentralized private justice we talked about earlier.
Lastly, let's just revisit the concept of the underestimated little one in The Golden Goose. This is a quintessential example of the dumbling trope.
Yes, the dumbling, or simpleton. He's the third youngest son who always succeeds, where his two clever but selfish elder brothers fail. And his success is guaranteed solely by his foundational kindness. He shares his miserable cinder cake and sour beer with a little gray man he meets in the forest.
And that initial act of kindness is immediately rewarded. The humble food transforms into fine sweet cake and good wine. This moral transformation is key, and it earns him the golden goose.
And the goose's magical power is entirely passive, but it's hilarious. Anyone who touches it gets permanently stuck. This creates that absurd, perpetually lengthening chain of people sticking to each other.
It starts with the three greedy innkeeper's daughters, followed by the parson, the sexton, and two laborers.
And the resulting absurdity, this seven-person chain running behind the simpleton, is the key to achieving the main goal, which is making the perpetually serious princess laugh. She sees the ridiculous procession, begins to laugh quite loudly, and as if she would never stop.
But even after achieving the central goal, Dumbling still has to complete three more impossible tasks: drinking a cellar full of wine, eating a mountain of bread, and procuring a ship that can sail on land and water.
But he just uses the network established by his initial act of kindness. The little gray man and other helpers, the thirsty man who drinks the wine, the hungry man who eats the bread, they solve the problems for him.
So the simpleton's journey is less about individual heroism and more about demonstrating basic human decency, which then guarantees that the magical universe will rally its resources to ensure his ultimate success. The system rewards foundational goodness.
Exactly. The simpleton, unlike his greedy brothers who failed to share, proved he understood the transactional nature of kindness, and the rewards were delegated labor and a royal marriage.
We have certainly navigated a strange, complicated world. It's defined by these stark, immediate, and often very proportional consequences. The key takeaway from these sources, I think, is that the Grimm's world is one of transactional consequence, where rules, whether they're magical or ethical, are ironclad.
The core lesson we can extract is that if you break the rules of vanity or pride, you are punished. We saw that with the golden bird, with Rumpelstiltskin. If you demonstrate wit, even accidental wit, you're rewarded, like Dr. Know-all or the tailor.
And if you are betrayed, that betrayal is often final, like with the cat and mouse.
And what stands out most to me is the decentralized nature of justice. It's rarely the king or the established system setting things right. It's almost always a private, lethal affair.
Think back on how justice was delivered in these deep-rooted tales. The wicked stepmother in the juniper tree was crushed by a millstone dropped by a bird. That's a private spiritual execution.
The cruel carter was killed by his own wife's misguided rage, orchestrated by a sparrow.
And the greedy villagers were murdered by the little peasant, who was then rewarded with all of their wealth.
This pattern suggests that in the world where these stories emerged from, survival and immediate practical revenge were the only reliable systems of consequence. The institutional order often needs saving or tricking, but nature and magic will always impose their own swift, brutal consequences.
In a world without reliable institutions, you needed sharp wits, loyal animal friends, and a strong sense of how to properly use, or critically, how to avoid a shabby wooden cage. The best defense against chaos was understanding the non-obvious rules of the universe.
Or perhaps just being lucky enough to call yourself Crab when the dish under the lid was, in fact, crabs. A testament to the deep, strange, and entirely unforgettable world of the Brothers Grimm.
It's been a truly wicked dive into the mechanics of folklore. Thank you for exploring these complex sources with us.